Welcome back to Old School Sports and our Out of the Park Baseball 25 series, Can We Save the Oakland A's? And we are about to begin the 2027 to 2028 offseason. Still have to find out who the World Series champion this year is going to be. It will certainly not be the Oakland A's. 72 and 90. We've had our worst season now of the 4 years that we've been in charge. We did rally over the last few weeks of the season to get out of the cellar in the AL West, and we actually got all the way up to third in the AL West. Now, granted, being third in the AL West is not necessarily saying that much because there were 4 teams with losing records in the division, and 3 of the worst 4 teams in baseball were in our division. We were better than only the Rangers, the Angels, and the Nationals. What that means is we won't have the maximum chance at 16.5% of getting the number 1 pick in the upcoming draft. Should be slotted in around 4th. Hopefully we'll do a little bit better than that. Won't find that out until the winter meetings. And by the time we find that out, we'll know whether or not we even still have a job. Certainly no guarantees. We did not do well with our goals this year. We're expected to play 500 ball, as we've talked about, 72 and 90. We were 14th in homers a year ago, ended up worst in the AL this year. Our farm system, very high priority, was to improve to the top 6, and somehow we're rated 24th now after being 27th at the start of the game. I think that is a bit harsh. By the other ranking, we rank 10th, but that's the one that's going to likely determine our fate. We have made modest progress since we started with our fan interest, so hopefully that will help a little bit, but we've been kind of stuck in the mid to high 30s for the last couple seasons right now, so not necessarily expecting much improvement to our budget next year, although we are projected to make a profit this year after losing about $2 million last season, which should help. And despite the fact that our results on the field can be charitably described as below average with 77, 75, 80, and 72 wins over these last 4 years, I do tend to agree with the assessments of the notorious KEV and Patrick DeBonis that we're likely to keep our job even though our contract is up. I think the big question is whether we're going to be put on a 1-year prove-it contract that is putting us on notice that things could be coming to an end for us very shortly in Oakland, or whether we'll get more than 1 year on the upcoming contract. And clearly there's some risk that we just get canned in about a month when the playoffs are over, but I am honestly not expecting that. And since I'm not expecting that, we're going to dig in and do our annual roster and performance review to hopefully start planning for whatever improvements we can make to this team in the upcoming offseason. And we had to play really well over the last month of the season, 19 and 11 in our last 30 games to get over 70 wins. We ended up 13th in the AL in runs scored and 11th in runs allowed. Our defense was good. We were pretty average on the base paths, well below average in every offensive category except for strikeouts, where we're kind of middle of the pack. And similar-ish results as far as the pitching. We're somehow second in BABIP, but otherwise kind of middle to lower end of the pack in most of the rankings. So we've got a lot of work to do this upcoming off season, and unfortunately with the obligations we have right now for next year at about $67 million, we're not going to have a ton of money to play with, but we'll be moving on from some of those arbitration eligible players, likely moving on from some team options, and possibly even moving on from some players who have guaranteed contracts for next year. So I don't think we're going to have the money this offseason to go crazy and add an impact player, but we will have a little bit of money to hopefully improve the edges of this roster. Taking a look at our pitching staff, Mason Miller, after a relatively triumphant return in half a season last year after missing a year and a half with injuries when he went 10-3 with a 3.29 ERA, was much more pedestrian this season, a 500 record and a 4.71 ERA. Did strike out 169 batters in 158 and two-thirds innings. And importantly, despite his fragility, he did make it through the season without any injuries. So that should allow us to put him into a strength and conditioning program this offseason. Still has a real nice arsenal of 4 above average to excellent pitches. So his stuff is well above average movement. The control, not necessarily great. Definitely got him this year with 95 walks and 158 and two-thirds innings. I'm tempted to put him into a control program, but we'll work on his strength and conditioning this offseason. And since we do have him signed to a contract for the medium term, a year from now, hopefully he'll be healthy and stronger, and maybe we'll throw him in a control program and hope for the best then. Clark Schmidt had a very weird season for us. He was good in April. He was horrible in May, June, and July. And then he won the American League Pitcher of the Month in both August and September. Ultimately finished with a 13-11, 3.77 ERA. Usual kind of 2 to 2.5 WAR season from him. Still signed for next year. The guaranteed number of $6.5 million, and then we get into the team options at the end of his contract. Could be nearing the end of his line with us, but probably will bring him back next year. Bubba Chandler, who we traded for with Pittsburgh right before the trade deadline, 3-4 record with a 4.55 ERA. He's set to make less than $2 million in arbitration after he didn't pitch as well with us as he had with Pittsburgh. 25 years old, might be a guy that we look to sign to certainly next year, and perhaps if we can get a decent agreement in place that gives us some outs and doesn't have really expensive annual figures on it, maybe we can try to lock him up for a little bit longer. Mitch Spence is a guy who's locked up for a few years at a reasonable amount. Really rough year for him after missing all of 2026 with injuries. 2-10 with a 4.78 ERA. Like the captain personality, like the ground ball tendencies, like that he's got good control and he doesn't walk a lot of people, but he gave up a lot of home runs and a lot of hits this year. His stuff is now below average. Not huge numbers on his contract, so it's a palatable deal. Would like to probably bring him back next year as a 5th starter, just so we can plug him in as our captain personality and not have to worry about tracking down someone else. Domingo Germán, we signed to a minor league deal before the season. Ended up in our rotation right at the end of the year when we figured to give him a chance because J.P. Sears had a rough year. 2-3 with a 3.06 ERA. He's headed to free agency, not looking for crazy money. It's not inconceivable that we would bring him back. No guarantee that he'll be in the rotation next year. Still, as I talked about, would maybe like to upgrade our 4th starter, move Spence to number 5, and I'm assuming Miller, Schmidt, and Chandler will probably be back as our top 3. Chase Lee, after we made a number of trades right before the trade deadline, ended up getting plugged into the closer role for us towards the end of the year. Finished with an ERA of close to 4, ERA plus above average, but FIP minus below average. He was below replacement level. He signed to a not too onerous deal, so he'll probably be back. In a perfect world, I'd prefer him in a setup role rather than a closer role. Ben Leeper, Rule 5 pick from this past offseason, 3.68 ERA over 73 and a third innings. Still set to make the major league minimum next year, and he's got options, so he will presumably be in the mix to come back. Jesus Soto was a rental for us, left-handed pitcher. Didn't really do as well as we had hoped with a 4.40 ERA over a league-high 70 games pitched. His arbitration number is expected to be high next year. I don't know why I'm not... I thought he was eligible for arbitration. Maybe not, but maybe because he's been making so much money, his number next year is still expected to be high. Yeah, it's $6 million. So that's not a number that I think we are likely to engage on. So we will see if there's any trade value at all for him. Otherwise, we'll probably just let him go. Another guy that we may be moving on from is J.P. Sears. He was an all-star just last season in 2026. 7-15 with a 5.37 ERA this year. Has those extreme fly ball tendencies and gave up 30 home runs in 157 and 2/3 innings. On the wrong side of 30 and set to be making about $5.5 million in arbitration. I tend to think we may look to trade him away if we can get anything for him. Otherwise, might not give him an arbitration offer. And that's why, conceivably, Domingo Germán might be in the mix. Justin Topa is a guy that we got back in one of the trades we made right before the trade deadline. Actually did fine for us with a 2.86 ERA over 28 and a third innings. But he'll be 37 before next season starts. Has below average stuff. Pretty unlikely that we will push hard to bring Mr. Topa back. Victor Araño, former Rule 5 pick, 5 ERA over 82 and 2/3 innings. Set to make about $2.8 million next year. Tend to think we'll likely be moving on from him as well. Ken Waldachuk had been with us through the first 3 years. We let him go this offseason and then ended up signing him as a minor league free agent right when the year was beginning. He is a left-hander, and we don't necessarily have a ton of left-handers who are going to be back in our pen. But he was not particularly effective in either AAA or Oakland this year. Don't think he'll be back with us unless he happens to agree to another minor league contract. Tyler Mahle, signed him to be kind of an insurance guy for the rotation for us, and he was pretty bad, allowing 20 home runs in 100 innings pitched with a 5.40 ERA, half a win below replacement. He does still, on paper, have the ability to be a fifth starter or, preferably a guy for us who could be a long reliever and start if we needed him to, but he's unhappy with his role. We do have a team option for $1.2 million on him. It's not inconceivable that we would exercise that. I think in a perfect world, we'd probably have guys like Mason Miller and Clark Schmidt as fourth and fifth starters rather than 1 and 2 starters. But in a perfect, realistic world, given our salary constraints, I could see a scenario where Germán and Mahle both come back, but we kind of view them as long or middle relievers who can start for us in a pinch. And as I said, I'd like to upgrade at least one spot in the rotation this offseason. David Peterson, left-hander, split the year between AAA Las Vegas and the majors in Oakland, and he was not particularly successful at either level. Question whether he will be back next year as well. So when I think about the pitching staff overall, we've probably got at least one spot in the starting rotation we'd like to upgrade. Clearly, if there were multiple spots we could upgrade in the rotation. Would love to do that. Just don't know how practical it's going to be with our salary constraints. Looking at the bullpen, though, it's conceivable that Lee and Leaper are kind of the only guys back who have prominent roles in the bullpen. Conceivably, Male and Herman could end up in less high leverage bullpen roles, but expecting a fair amount of turnover in our bullpen. Hopefully, the Rule 5 will prove fruitful for us, and maybe there will be an opportunity in free agency or the trade market as well. And before we take a look at our everyday players, we'll sim through the wild card series. Got a lot of division foes facing off. The Rays and the Red Sox from the AL East, Guardians and the Twins from the AL Central, the Pirates and the Brewers from the NL Central, and then the Miami Marlins and the St. Louis Cardinals will meet in the final wild card series here in 2027. And slightly interestingly, all three of the wild card series between divisional foes were sweeps, with the Red Sox, Twins, and Pirates advancing, and the Cardinals took care of the Marlins in 3 games. So the Dodgers and the Cardinals, believe that's a rematch of the 85 NLCS. Pittsburgh and Atlanta, I believe those teams were playing each other in the playoffs in the early 90s. Orioles and Red Sox in a AL East matchup, and the Twins will be facing off against Seattle. But before we find out who moves on to the League Championship Series, we'll take a look at our offense and our everyday players. Drake Baldwin, the young catcher, not nearly as productive as he was in less than half a season after we traded for him before the trade deadline in 2026. Also had some injury issues, ended up hitting just .232 with a 92 WRC plus and 315 at-bats. Did walk 38 times, so his on-base percentage was almost 100 points better than his batting average. Still put up a WAR of close to 2. He's a very good defensive catcher. Would hope that he hits a little bit more going forward. Would love to have him be around a 3 WAR player. Our backup catcher, Will Banfield, also not a big-time offensive season, hit just .225 and 244 at-bats. Had to play a little more than we would have hoped, given the injuries that Baldwin did have. He's another guy who's a very good defensive catcher. Certainly would hope for more than a 61 WRC plus. If he can get that up 10 points even, just into the 70s, I think he's certainly a reasonable guy to have around as a backup catcher, or in this case, he's playing regularly against lefties while Baldwin's playing regular against righties. Don't think we're going to do too much at catcher this offseason. Clearly, if there was a trade for someone with a great glove and a great bat available, we would think about it. And if there was a brilliant free agent we could get for a decent price, we would think about it. But at the very least, with Baldwin and Banfield, feel like we'll be heading into next season with a couple of very good gloves behind the plate. And the hope is that they might deliver a bit more offense next year than they did this past season. Turning to the infielders, and we'll start with a couple guys who are very unlikely to be back. Jake Bauers ended up hitting .246 with 7 homers and 175 at-bats. Was an above-average offensive player in the relatively small sample size, but a 32-year-old who's not particularly good defensively. Set to make close to $2 million in arbitration. Probably not the answer for us. Josh Naylor is a guy who we signed in August, and he ended up playing regularly for us in the month of September. 3 homers and 19 ribbies and 112 at-bats, but it only added up to a 70 WRC plus. Not the greatest in the clubhouse, not much defensively, also on the wrong side of 30, so pretty unlikely that he will be back with us next year as well. Austin Gauthier split the year between AAA and the majors, but really primarily in AAA. Just came up at the very end of the season and was 1 for 9. Like his defensive versatility, like his ability to draw walks, he still does have an option year left and is making the major league minimum. So he'll probably be in the mix to be a utility player for us again next year. I think in a perfect world, would prefer that he ends up in AAA to start the year. If he has to be on the if he has to be on the 26-man lineup coming out of spring training, probably means that we've either had some injuries or we haven't been able to do much at all to improve the team over the course of the offseason. Now we'll turn to some guys who more likely will be in the mix to be with us next year. Eddys Leonard, we traded for from the Reds in June. He ended up playing regularly for us against left-handed pitching, and he was pretty productive. 270 average, 8 doubles, a triple, 6 homers, and 21 ribbies in just 141 at-bats. Added up to a 118 WRC plus. Would think that he would still be in the mix to play second or third for us next year against left-handed pitching. He's out of option years, still set to make the major league minimum. So he will likely be competing for a roster spot. And if he doesn't get onto the 26-man roster, could be a guy that we look to trade away coming out of spring training. Brian Rincon of the young infielders had the best year for us out of anyone. 261 average, 34 doubles, 10 homers, 18 steals, 113 WRC plus, and a 4.6 WAR. He's very good defensively, pretty good in the clubhouse as well. Walked 74 times. He was a guy that you may remember we were trying to sign before the season began because his projected arbitration numbers weren't that high. Couldn't get a deal done with him. He was pretty insistent on looking for just a one-year deal. Unfortunately, his salary arbitration numbers are climbing, so we're probably not going to be able to lock him up for the medium to long term. But he still has 2 more years making the major league minimum before we even need to worry about those arbitration numbers. So he likely will be a starting second baseman or perhaps shortstop for us next year. Max Muncy, 25 years old, split the year between Vegas and Oakland. Hit just 219 with an 80 WRC plus in the majors, but is a right-handed hitter. Could be in the mix again to play primarily against left-handed pitching. You would think that he and Eddys Leonard could definitely be competing for a final utility infield spot for us next year. And it's not inconceivable that they both make the team. Nick Ahmed, probably someone we're moving on from. Had been our starting shortstop for a couple of years. His defense at the age of 37 is starting to decline a little bit, and he put up just a 27 WRC plus for us as a part-time player. Was almost a run below replacement level. Got a team option for $1.5 million. We'll probably look to trade him for anything we can when we get to the offseason. And if we can't trade him away, we'll likely be declining that option. Cameron Cawley, shortstop that we traded for at this point 2.5 years ago, finally established himself this year when he came back from an injury midway as a consistent major leaguer. He's presumably our shortstop. Like his glove, like his speed. The big question is his bat. He got off to a sizzling start with us this year coming off of that injury. But when all is said and done, he only hit 203 for us in the majors. Did have 7 homers, so a little bit of pop in the bat, but it all added up to a 65 WRC plus. That said, he's still making the major league minimum. He's another guy whose projected arbitration numbers are relatively high, so probably not a guy we're going to be able to lock up early. But would say at this point, my vision would be that Cawley is our shortstop next year. Rincon is our second baseman. And Leonard, Muncy, Gauthier likely fighting to play at third base or perhaps have utility infielder roles. Another guy who's listed as a left fielder but could also be in the mix to be a utility infielder for us is Tyler Black. Hit 249 in 497 at-bats, did have 29 doubles, did steal 17 bases. Pretty much a league average offensive player, but he's fairly versatile defensively. He's got some speed. He's competent at a lot of defensive positions. And he's another guy who will be making the major league minimum next year. He is out of options, though, so similar to Eddie's Leonard, he's probably going to need to make the 26-man roster or potentially be traded away. Turning to our outfielders, Seth Brown is a guy who was with us at the start of this playthrough, signed him to a minor league free agent contract before 2026. He ended up getting called up to the majors in September, did not even actually get an at-bat for us in the majors. 35 years old, would think that he's pretty unlikely to be back with us next year unless he signs a minor league contract and is willing once again for us to stash him in AAA and him just to be an insurance policy if we have some injuries. Guy who more likely could be back with us is Jorge Ruiz. Picked him up in a trade with the Angels right before the deadline. Like his ability to actually make contact with the ball. Like his defensive ability, he's got decent speed. The issues is that he doesn't really draw a lot of walks and doesn't really have much power. And he's also fragile physically. Hit just 240 at-bats as a late season call-up. Not a big part of our future, I don't think, but he's got 2 option years left making the major league minimum. So he'll likely be in the mix to be competing for a 5th outfielder spot for us next year. Luis Lara is now our starting center fielder. We kind of put him into that role when we traded Esteury Ruiz away, and we subsequently signed Lara to a longer-term contract. Like his glove, like his speed, just question how much he's going to hit. And that is still certainly a question after his initial foray into the major leagues this year. Batted just 233 with a 75 WRC plus, was below replacement level as his outfield defense couldn't make up for the lack of pop in his bat. Did steal 16 bases, did have 20 doubles. We think his power could perhaps get a little bit better. He's going to be turning 23 this offseason, and since he's signed for the medium to long term, very conceivable that we'll put him into some type of development programs in the development lab since he's someone we've invested in. Brian Buelvas spent the entire year in the majors, starting primarily against left-handed pitching, and given that he was mainly in a platoon role and mainly playing against the type of pitchers he should do well against, the fact that he only put up a 79 WRC plus was disappointing. Like his speed, decent glove, and we think that he can be a useful-ish major league bat, particularly against left-handed pitching. But he hasn't proven it in, at this point, parts of 3 seasons in the majors. So have to see more from him, a guy who's still making the major league minimum, a guy who's still got options left. So he'll be in the mix to be a 4th or 5th outfielder next year. Last, but hopefully not least, Lawrence Butler. We've got him signed for the medium term. Continues to be disappointing offensively, hit 234 for the 2nd consecutive year. Did boost some of his other numbers a bit, but it was really entirely driven by the additional at-bats he had. Incredibly consistent. You can see batting average the same, on-base percentage 7 points higher, slugging percentage 1 point lower than a year ago. So I think we have a pretty good sense of what he is. Put up a 94 WRC plus, 2.4 WAR on the season. He's a solid defensive player. Did steal 19 bases, hit 20 homers. Not a star. If he's the sixth or seventh best hitter on your team, I think you're probably okay. The issue is he's arguably one of the best offensive players on our team, which is a bit of a problem. And two pretty important offensive players for us ended up on the IL. Tyler Soderstrom at least got to play most of the year. Hit 244, 20 homers, 62 ribbies, pretty much a league average offensive player after he really busted out in 2026 and gave us some hope that that contract we signed him to would be an incredible value. He will still almost certainly be our first baseman next year, and would love to see a 115, 120 WRC plus kind of year out of Soderstrom. I think we can certainly help him get that way if we can ensure that he's playing primarily against right-handed pitching. We did end up using him because of some of the trades that we made that weakened our roster a bit. We used him a bit more against left-handed pitching this year, which is probably part of the reason that his numbers don't look quite as impressive. And then Darell Hernaiz suffered a torn PCL. He's still going to be out for another 7 months, so he's likely going to miss all of spring training. Have to start him in a rehab assignment probably sometime in April, early May. He is another guy who's in the mix to be a second baseman or third baseman for us. Another very versatile defensive player, decent speed, good contact. The question is everything besides the contact. Hit 268 for us this year, 11 for 11 stealing bases, 19 doubles and 381 at-bats, 82 WRC plus. He's a little older and more experienced than some of the other infielders, so he's set to go to arbitration, but the $2.4 million is not going to be a number that we wouldn't be willing to pay for him. So I think we'll hope that Hernaiz is ready to go by early to mid-May. And who knows, it may end up, as I talked about, Gauthier, Leonard, Muncy, Black, likely fighting for playing time at third base and maybe in a platoon at second base with Rincon, who's fragile and a bit more productive against right-handed pitching. So in a perfect world, maybe we platoon Rincon with some of those guys until Hernaiz is back. But I think in a world where everyone is completely healthy, probably kind of thinking Soderstrom at first, Cawley at short, and then Rincon and Hernaiz as our primary second baseman and third baseman, or third baseman and second baseman, with the other guys supplementing themselves in. So I don't love our catching in our infield, but I don't necessarily think, given that it's pretty much all players in their 20s who are competing for those spots, that we're going to necessarily do a ton in the offseason. Lara and Butler are kind of locked in as guys who are probably starting in the outfield. So the obvious thing that would probably be most impactful for us to do this offseason is if we could add an impact hitter in a corner outfield spot. So I think that's, along with some of the pitching needs that we have, an impact hitter who can play a corner outfield spot or potentially even just play DH is probably the primary thing we're going to be looking to find on the trade market or in free agency. I'm guessing we're not going to find that in the Rule 5 draft. And with the look at our roster now complete and our initial thoughts on what we should or perhaps consider doing this offseason, time to see what happens in the division series in both the AL and the NL. And it was almost a complete massacre for the teams that had first round byes and home field advantages in the division series. Cardinals upended the Dodgers in four. The Pirates upended the Braves in four. The Red Sox upended the Orioles in four. And the Twins actually took a 2-0 lead on the Mariners before the Mariners rallied to win 2 in Minnesota and then Game 5 back at home to be the only team with home field advantage that made it to the League Championship Series this year. I guess those are two pretty historically franchises that have struggled a bit in the postseason and have some bitter postseason disappointments, kind of throughout the history of the Mariners in the playoffs, and certainly post their 87 and 91 World Series victories. The Twins have not been particularly distinguished in the playoffs, and that continues this year with Seattle rallying from the 2-0 deficit to take out the Twins. And we'll take a look at a few of the top prospects in our organization before we move on to the League Championship Series. Last year, some of you noted that we had players who were pretty negative as far as their attitudes. That was largely driven, as I noted in the comments last year to that episode, by players who just really stunk. And in, I think, one situation last year, there was players who also were feeling bad because their team struggled. Similar situation this year. Generally pretty decent morale among most of our players, and you can see we did pretty well across our minor league system. The one exception was our Class A team, and you'll see that we promoted a couple people from rookie ball to Class A, and that ended up having a negative impact on their attitude because of the losing that team did. You'll also see that I did screw up. I had thought I had made the changes to increase the length of the ACL and the DSL seasons. Thought I had done what I had needed to do that in the preseason, but unfortunately that didn't happen. So it did end up meaning that the class of draftees here in 2027 that we were pretty excited about all had to wait until next year to begin their professional careers in earnest. Bertrand Albrighton is the top prospect in our organization, international free agent signing from 2026. We promoted him out of the international complex this year. Hit .221 as a 17-year-old in rookie ball. Didn't embarrass himself, didn't really distinguish himself either. Still love his personality and still really like his potential bat. We will probably get him into a strength and conditioning program in the development lab this offseason, since he's now out of the international complex and eligible to do that. Juan Rodas was our prime international free agent signing the year before Albrighton. He's the number 42 prospect in baseball. We had success in the development lab with him this past offseason, but he was only a little better in rookie ball as an 18-year-old. Hit .240, 6 homers, 23 ribbies, 10 steals. His WRC plus improved from 21 to 74, so certainly moving in the right direction. Would hope that this upcoming season he's a really good player in rookie ball, and we're able to promote him to Class A at some point during the 2028 season. Would love it if a guy like Rodas was able to be helping us at the major league level sometime in 2030, maybe even late in 2029 as a September call-up, but given that he's still in rookie ball and he's only 19 years old, that's probably a little bit ambitious. And speaking of international amateur free agents, Alejandro Landin was our main focus this past season. Spent the year at our international complex. Loved the personality, liked the defense, really liked the potential bat. he conceivably will be playing with our DSL team this upcoming season. Now to two of the guys that you can see those guys all had pretty positive morale. Two of the guys that we weakened a little bit in terms of morale were Roussel Shepard and Cruz Schoolcraft, a couple of former first-round draft choices who we promoted to that awful Class A team. Roussel Shepard made his professional debut, hit 289 in rookie ball, 10 homers and 204 at-bats, 122 WRC+. So we promoted him up to Class A, where he didn't embarrass himself with an 80 WRC+, although that .95 batting average, not particularly impressive. Did have 6 home runs for us. But you can see he's unhappy, and the team record was the biggest factor in that, where he's really angry, doesn't handle losing well. So we knew we were taking a risk promoting him to that pretty bad A team, but he really didn't have anything left to prove in rookie ball. Hopefully we'll be able to have a more competitive A team next year. Kind of a similar situation with Cruz Schoolcraft. That team record in A-ball, a big issue for him. He did improve this year in his second year in rookie ball, 2-2 record with a 3.67 ERA as a pitcher. Definitely struggled pitching in Class A. The bat, still interesting, hit a .63 in rookie ball. Did have 7 home runs before we promoted him to A-ball, where he hit just a .29. He's still a potential two-way player. The bat is definitely coming along more slowly than the arm. I don't think he's ever going to be a superstar. Probably going to have to work on his control at some point. And if we think about his hitting, we're definitely going to have to work on his ability to avoid strikeouts at some point and perhaps even make more contact. But he's got that incredible power. He's still got potentially really interesting stuff. Hasn't necessarily developed as quickly or as smoothly as we would like, but still definitely feel like he's got some potential. So we've got those 5 top 100 prospects that we talked about, and then we've also got 6 more prospects in the top 200. We'll talk about them quickly. Jai Watterson, international free agent signing from 2025, really has not impressed in 3 years in rookie ball. Looking at his ratings, kind of trending towards maybe being a 4th or 5th starter or a long or middle reliever. Doesn't look like he's going to be exceptional in terms of his stuff, but could have enough variety in his pitches that with the durability, with the good personality, might look to find a spot on a team for him. Probably need to promote him to A-ball next year. I don't see any reason to repeat rookie ball for a 4th consecutive year with him, even though he hasn't distinguished himself, as I said. Miles Naylor ended up being injured at the end of the year, but he is kind of the closest of any of these guys to contributing. Big year for him, where he moved from high A, where he hit over 300 with a 175 WRC+, to double A. The batting average dropped to 240, but still hit 9 homers and 28 ribbies and 104 at-bats, 122 WRC+. So we promoted him all the way to triple A, where he kind of struggled. 229 average, just 1 homer and 70 at-bats. Doesn't really have a profile where I think he's going to be a huge part of our future, but as a right-handed hitter, could maybe he potentially be a platoon corner outfielder playing regularly against left-handed pitching in a couple of years. I think it's possible. Not a big-time prospect, and I think if the right trade was out there, we'd certainly consider including him in it. Not sure how much value other teams are going to place on him either. Duncan Marston was our first-round draft pick, 4th overall in 2024. He is, unfortunately, another guy who spent some time in that Class A Stockton team this year. Wasn't necessarily incredible there, but he had basically spent 2 full years in Stockton, half a season in 2025, all of 2026, and then half of this year. So felt like it was time to see what he could do in high A ball. 6-6 with a 5.03 ERA, 124 strikeouts and 98 and a third innings. The issue with him is just keeping the ball in the ballpark. We talked last year how he gave up 41 homers and 138 and a third innings. I guess he was technically a little better this year, allowing 32 home runs in a little less than 150 innings. I believe we had put him on a movement program in the lab last offseason that didn't really pay off. But he's going to have to improve his ability being a fly ball pitcher to keep the ball in the park if he's going to have any chance of success in the majors. His stuff isn't far off major league quality, and his control is not bad, but the number of home runs that he is allowing is definitely a limiting factor on his potential future at this point. Alexis Furman on rookie ball, a guy that we picked up in a trade with Kansas City when we were just looking for prospects. Hit just $178 for us in 180 at-bats with our DSL team, 22 WRC plus. Like his potential power, don't know if he's going to end up versatile enough that power will make him a major leaguer, but it's a lottery ticket. Luis Parra, international free agent signing from our first IAFA class in 2025. Improved his performance in A-ball this year. Certainly was not exceptional, but at 21 years old, he'll be 22 in May. Tend to think it's probably time to promote him to high A or maybe double A, spending the whole year on that awful Stockton team. Not the best thing for his morale, unfortunately. And then last but not least, Matthew Sharman also spent the year in A-ball. You can see he's been thoughtful enough about what's going on that he hasn't let that crush his morale, even though he's still very unhappy with the team record. Fourth round pick from 2026, split the year between rookie ball and A-ball, was lights out in rookie ball and was reasonably successful in A-ball. Would think he'll probably begin the year in high A next year as a 20-year-old. May be 2-3 seasons away from potentially being someone who in a best case scenario could be a fourth or fifth starter for us. In a more realistic scenario, he's probably a middle or long reliever out of the pen. And with that quick review of some of our top prospects done, let's find out who's going to be facing off in the 2027 World Series. And the 2027 World Series will feature two of the most prominent and storied franchises in Major League Baseball history, the Boston Red Sox facing off against the St. Louis Cardinals. And before finding out who the World Series champions are, we'll take a look at some of the players that we've thought about in the draft and or international amateur free agency in recent years. Andres Rojas, a big-time pitching prospect, drafted in the second round, 47th overall. And he still looks like he can be a good one. He's the knuckleballer that we were hoping would drop to us at number 53 in the second round of this past year draft. Looks like he is signed with the Marlins organization, despite the fact that he was coming out of junior college and he's 20 years old. They chose not to play him in A-ball. And as I talked about, it looks like the rookie season was over. So didn't get any experience this year, but still think he is likely to be a pretty interesting major leaguer, and we'll keep following him. Juan Sanabria, international free agent from 2025, number 7 prospect in baseball. Still hasn't made it out of rookie ball, where he's played the last 3 seasons, 2-1 with a 5.44 ERA this year. On paper, still looks like he can be a pretty interesting player. Clearly, that shows in his prospect ranking, but he is fragile and has not shown much in 3 years in professional baseball yet. Matt Scott was a college pitcher out of Stanford. Made his major league debut this year, 1-0 record with a 5.97 ERA over 34 and 2/3 innings, working out of the bullpen for the Braves. He's a guy who went 27th overall in 2025. Was one of those college players that many of you are always encouraging me to sign. Does look like if he makes the improvements we think he could with his stuff, could certainly be more than a 4th or 5th starter, which is where I thought he might be pegged when we were thinking about taking him. But looks like he's had some interesting development, although here it's saying his high end of his stuff is not as high as it shows. Oh, that's because he's listed as a relief pitcher here now, because he's playing as a reliever for them. That makes more sense. So yeah, when we were to look at him as a starter, which is how we thought about him, maybe he's a 3 rather than a 4 or 5, so I still may have been a little harsh on him given the good personality. But it doesn't look like he's likely to be a superstar. Catcher Cade Arambide, likely will take him off the list. He's a guy we thought about in the draft a couple of years ago. Doesn't look like we're expecting him to be a big-time player. Nice defensively, borderline major league quality bat. Hit a .152 in A ball this year after hitting a .147 in rookie ball. Byron Dervish, first baseman with potentially incredible home run power, international free agent signing from 2025. 342 average, 7 homers and 40 ribbies this year in the DSL. Would assume that he will be promoted to A ball next year. Jesus de la Campa, shortstop that we were pretty intrigued by, an international amateur free agency this past year. I know some of you really liked him as well. Potentially outstanding contact hitter, going to be slapping extra base hits all over the field. He is still in the international complex for the Royals. Joe Edwards, who we thought about taking at 4th overall a year ago, just didn't feel like financially it made sense for us. Made his professional debut this year and was pretty solid at both rookie ball and A ball with 135 and 115 WRC pluses. He's viewed as the number 3 prospect in all of baseball right now. David Orta was an international amateur free agent we really liked in 2026. We ended up going with the guy who's now the top prospect in our system, Bertrand Albrighton, instead. Our international scouting team liked Albrighton a bit better than Orta, and we ultimately did as well. Orta, you can see, is viewed as the number 12 prospect, while Albrighton is number 21 right now. So small advantage to Orta thus far. He was a league average player in rookie ball this year as a 17-year-old. I would think he'll probably get another year in rookie ball this upcoming year, but looks like he could be ready for A ball in the not too distant future. Bryce Rayner, potential two-way player that we had looked at, is a pitcher. He had progressively worse results this year as he was promoted from rookie ball to A ball to high A ball, at least in terms of his ERAs. Batting wise, the batting averages also went down from 244 to 212 to 083. Still has a profile that is a very interesting defensive player. Don't think the bat is really major league quality. Pitching wise, looks like he could be a useful arm most likely he's a end of the rotation guy. And last but certainly not least, Galterio Mancina, a IAFA player in 2025 that we were pretty impressed with, and I know that some of you liked as well. Number 2 prospect in baseball, hit .290 with 7 homers and 176 at-bats this year in rookie ball. 103 WRC plus at that level a year after putting up a 125 WRC plus. Would have to think he will be in A ball for the Kansas City organization next year. And your 2027 World Series champions are the St. Louis Cardinals. The Midwest has dominated baseball through the 4 years of this playthrough. Cleveland, back-to-back champions in 2024 and 25. The Cubs were the champs last year. And now the Cardinals are your 2027 World Series champions. And it looks like, as expected, we will be back for a 5th season in Oakland. Haven't been fired, which is good. We'll check shortly and see how much our contract was extended. Again, if it's just a 1-year deal, that's a pretty negative sign. As we talked about, we've got option decisions this year on Tyler Mahle and Nick Ahmed. Looks like Ahmed may have retired because that option year decision is no longer relevant, and Ahmed did decide to hang it up. So really just one decision that we need to make there. Looking at a review of our season goals, not happy with our performance on the field, not happy with the lack of home runs, not happy that we haven't acquired a big-time player, made a little bit of progress in attendance, wants us to do more with the farm system, wants us to do more with fan interest, and he's disappointed in what we've done in IAFA. So not a great scorecard or report card for us. Wanted to make us the playoffs in a few seasons in 2026. Deadline's not up, but he's not feeling very confident. He's unhappy with the performance that we put forth in accomplishing the goals he's given us. But when he considers on and off field success, his overall mood is good. Wants us to not suck completely next year. So that's a little easier than the fact that he was looking for a better than 500 record this year. So that's one benefit of our poor season. Still wants us to acquire a top player, make some progress with attendance, increase fan interest, do better with IAFAs and our farm system. So we've got a lot of progress that we're going to have to try to make. The budget, $126 million. I believe that is completely flat. So that kind of seems to be settling in as the level for us. Unfortunately, I'll take a quick look here. Yeah, we've been at $126 million. It'll be a third straight year. So last year we had better success on the field, but we disappointed him financially. This year we were worse on the field, but we did better financially, and in both cases it's just added up to a flat budget. Now the really interesting thing, are we going year to year now, or do we have maybe a little bit more job security? I'd love a 3-year extension. I don't think there's any way he's going to give that to us, but I feel like that would take us through years 5, 6, and 7. If I haven't made some improvements to the organization by then, I certainly would deserve to be fired. I can't imagine he's going to give that to us, though. I would think it's going to say we're either going year to year right now, in which case I probably have to have some success on the field and with his goals next year. If it's a 2-year deal, I'll feel like the leash is a little bit longer. Oh, and our team trainer has left. I knew that was coming. Some of you have mentioned him in the past with all of our injuries, and I don't love that he was only okay with preventing arm injuries. The two things I tend to care about most are fatigue recovery, where he was legendary, and then preventing arm injuries because I do focus on pitching so heavily. But he was so kind of good at everything else that I kept him around when we took this over. But hopefully there will be some interesting options on the market for us this year. And now, without any further ado, the contract situation. And he's given us 3 years and a raise to $490,000 a year. We were making just $220,000 before then. So doesn't mean that we can't just still get fired at a moment's notice, but I feel like 4 years into this, with potentially 3 years ahead of us, if we haven't been able to develop some prospects who are helping improve our situation at the major league level by then we're not doing our job right. So that's pretty much as good a result as I think I could have hoped for in the contract situation with Mr. Fisher. And you can see that to make the numbers associated with our, once again, lowest budget in baseball work, right now, scouting and player development have been cut back, but we will be getting some of these salaries off the team. Sears, Arano, still have a decision on Male. Seth Brown is going to likely be gone. So Jesus Soto will likely be gone. So we definitely have the ability to take a fair amount of salary out of this, which will give us a little more flexibility heading into the postseason, or the offseason more accurately, and will also give us the ability to potentially upgrade scouting and player development. Player development in particular is going to be real important to try to get that farm system producing major league quality players at some point over these next 2 or 3 years. And there will be a fair amount of pitching talent potentially on the free agent market. We still have closers looking for well over $20 million. So that's something that I had hoped the OOTP folks would have been taken care of, because it's been obvious from when the game first came out. We're 3 major patches through, and it still seems like the demands of premier relievers are a bit unrealistic, but it is what it is. We're definitely not going to be playing at the top end of the market, but we're going to need to add some arms to the bullpen, particularly some lefties. Maybe a Trevor Rogers could be in the mix. Jojo Romero probably going to be a little too expensive for us. We'll have to investigate that. As we talked about, the biggest thing that I'd like to do this offseason is to add a big-time bat. Doesn't necessarily look like there's going to be anything realistic for us to do. Kyle Tucker looking for $35 million. Jazz Chisholm, $25-ish million. Joe Adell is a guy we could afford. Don't love the lack of contact. Better against left-handed pitching than right-handed pitching. Doesn't honestly look all that dissimilar to Anthony Santander, who we traded away this past year, was making similar money. I don't know that that's a lever that we would press. I'm not going to sign Joey Gallo. Eloy Jimenez, we should check in on him. I know that some of you encouraged us to sign him this past offseason. He had a pretty solid year with the Yankees in Detroit. Averaged out to about a 117 WRC plus between the two teams, and he played 154 games, so he was playing every day. I know I had said I'd probably play him primarily against left-handed pitching, looking at his profile, but with 154 games played and almost 600 at-bats, clearly he was playing against just about everybody, a lot of right-handed pitching, and with 25 home runs and 97 ribbies, along with a batting average in the 280s, he was more productive than I gave him credit for. Certainly would have been worth the $5.4 million that he ended up signing for, although he probably would have cost us more than that. Looking for $13 million a year, so don't know if he's realistically in the mix for us. Jesus Sanchez and Cedric Mullins, another couple guys that probably could help us. I don't think they're really the difference makers that we need with a bat, and they're a little expensive for us right now. But if a Jimenez, a Mullins, or a Sanchez is around in March, looking for $6-8 million a year, might be a path for us to pursue with one of those guys. Don't know that it's going to happen, but that might be the most realistic path if we're going to look at the free agent market for some help. Hopefully there will be something we can pull off in a trade. I'd love to get a younger, legitimate major league hitter onto this team that we can start building some semblance of an offense around. Just don't know if we're going to be able to pull it off in terms of the money that we'd have to pay for that person in salary, or more likely the potential resources that we'd have to give them up to pick them up in a trade. But that will be one of our primary focuses now that the offseason is underway. And we'll talk about what we are doing in the development lab and what we decide to do in terms of all of our arbitration eligible players in our next episode. Until then, thanks so much for watching, and hope you have a great day.